When we started concepting for Resistance, we knew we wanted to do a first-person shooter. And we knew we wanted to do something that was a little bit out of the ordinary.
We're trying a lot of things with this game that nobody's really done before. We're looking at crazy weapons. We're looking at just a very polished, very tight, fun experience. The kind of thing that Insomniac Games is known for.
And what we ended up with was an alternate history story, something that felt familiar but had some unique twists that would set it apart from most of the other first-person shooters that you see today. When we started designing Resistance: Fall of Man, we knew we were up against a lot of barriers. And first of all, there was this public perception that a company like Insomniac really wouldn't be able to do a dark, more mature game. We are known for more comedic games like Ratchet & Clank, where it's all about the humor and the goofy weapons. We had to come up with a story that was a little bit more gripping, perhaps, much more bleak than the stories we've written before.
We have a reputation for being very good at creating very tight, very polished experiences that are just more than anything else incredibly fun.
Even though the subject matter might be different and the field might be different, the same drive to create, a quality product is still there.
So for our artists, for our designers, for those of us who are working on the story, we really had to change our way of thinking to make Resistance work.
I sent the troops back to Southern Command for a well-earned rest.
One of the things that we've always wanted this game to be was really gritty, realistic, and really immersive. We really wanted a game to feel really cinematic.
The most unique thing about our game, artistically, is this mix of very familiar human elements with the completely alien. And that's really something unique that I think people haven't seen in games before.
The content of the game has been kind of a fine line to walk along, mixing both the really reality-oriented stuff along with this fantasy. I mean, we're in 1950 England, and the next thing you know, you've got, virus-infected aliens walking around the place.
We wanted to use real-world settings, and we wanted to strive for realism in our game, but at the same time, we didn't want to be bound by those restraints. We really wanted to be able to experiment with a lot of different kinds of environments, and we wanted to be able to experiment with a lot of different looks.
Gameplay's role in Resistance: Fall of Man is to work with design and creative and come up with how to actually pull off these crazy things we talk about. We have these meetings where the whole company comes together and we'll discuss weapons or enemies or traps or ways to surprise the player. And then gameplay's primary role is to actually then figure out how to make that possible.
Through the development process, our kind of Insomniac nature was fighting to get out. Our strengths were in creative and interesting arsenal, strategic gameplay. So we started experimenting and seeing where we could go with that.
We started thinking hard about what we could do with the enemies to make them really aggressive and scary, what we could do with events in the game to shock the player, and what we could do with our weapons to make them much more brutal than the kind of weapons you would have seen in other games that we've done.
We're also really good at blowing shit up. We love to make very inventive ways of doing that. That's sort of our corporate identity. What's Insomniac going to give us to blow stuff up with this time?
For the weapons, for a game like ours, where we wanted to tell a story and we wanted to be fast action, it had to be the weapons that are your input, and they have to be more interesting than traditional military weapons, because you've already played those games. I designed the fun things first and let the story people figure out how they fit into the alternate history, and they did a great job of figuring out a fiction for the weapons.
I think with a first-person shooter, it becomes a challenge now to figure out what else the player can do besides just moving around and shooting things.
Bugger! It's Leapers!
So this affords us chances to think about things we've never had to think about before, like ambiance. Our game is very much about scaring people.
There's some pretty scary moments in the game, and we play it day and night, and we get scared sometimes, believe it or not.
The game is aggressive. We want the players to be kind of taken aback by what they're seeing. The characters themselves look mean. The environments look bleak. We want to kind of attack the player's senses with what you see on the screen, what you hear, and what's going on. Resistance has been one of the most complicated games we've ever made, not because of the content, but because we're dealing with a brand new platform. We were dealing with a brand new production pipeline. We had a lot of new folks coming onto the project, and we had to juggle all this stuff. At the same time, we were trying to keep the company feeling like a small company. We've always had several core principles that we've operated the company with. I mean, the number one is collaboration. I think that you can't make a great game without collaboration.
Anyone in the company really can make story suggestions or design suggestions or environment suggestions and know that those are really going to be considered carefully and many times used in the final product.
Anybody can contribute to any part of the company in terms of design or other elements that they have, and it's really cool. It's a lot of professional, creative people, and it's an excellent vibe.
It's great to get everybody's input on things and for them to see things that you didn't expect and to think of things that you didn't think of, and then you kind of add it all together, and it gets much better than you could have done on your own.
We can make a project and do it with the feeling of one mind.
I think the thing that is going to be received really well with this title is the fact that it features a lot of variety, and that's with weapons, with environments, with just about everything.
The polish level and the story are really going to pull you in, and it's going to stand out above most games.
My hope for Resistance Fall of Man is that people play it and they are surprised at how fun a first-person shooter really can be.
Actually, for me, the best thing would be if nobody could make a first-person shooter ever again without having it be like Resistance.
What we wanted to do was create a well-crafted experience, a game that really immerses players in the story, in the gameplay, a game that offers consistent artistic themes throughout, and a game that is purely fun. And that's what we've been focusing on from the very beginning. When it comes down to it, we're trying to create a great, involving, fun experience.